The next trip we made was to Sicily.
Temples with the tourists. All along that ridge, and all along there is all burial tombs, all those walls. They put niches going it up.
Did a standard tour totally around the island. And in the middle of the island of Sicily, there was this ruin of a Roman villa, somebody's luxury villa. And there was a series of pools that were filled with water with these mosaic bottoms. When you put water over them, they became sharp and clear. Unfortunately, we didn't have a chance to see them underwater. But there are many of them. They represent a lot of mythological scenes, scenes of hunting, and fish and snakes everywhere. People sailing, and this mythological scene of mermen with their tails attached at the knees with snake heads. And it's this kind of surprise, these women playing, that makes traveling worthwhile. Totally unexpected. They look so modern, like something from the fascist era, celebrating the Olympics. These women athletes are so unexpectedly freely drawn, totally unclassical. At this time, I had never seen them reproduced. Mount of Olives in the valley called Silwan. In 1987, I went back to Jerusalem to do a watercolor from which a print would be made. And this was to be a very large woodblock print, 10 feet wide. First attempt at such a large size. The project was conceived by Donald Saff of the University of South Florida Print Workshop. He said, let's do a really big print this time. And he described the woodblock process that he wanted to do. And he arranged for me to be a guest of the museum in the Print Workshop of Jerusalem, with which he was working at the time. And so I went with my wife, Dorothy. I picked this view. It represents the view into the Kidron Valley, which was the original city of David. He picked it because there's a well at the bottom that never runs out of water. But it's about 30 or 40 feet deep, and you go down by a steep spiral staircase. But this is the view I chose when I originally went there to make the woodblock. Here I am, set up, working on the watercolor, one half of the watercolor. After I did the initial drawing on the two pieces of paper attached, I decided it was easier to work on one half at a time. This is the line drawing for the first half. This is the almost finished watercolor of the second half. And for the final, I joined both halves and coordinated the light and shade of a given about 20 minutes of the whole view. There are the two of them joined, and the light more or less coordinated the other half. And then we made the woodblock. This is a photograph, I think, of the final woodblock print. This is a photograph of the original watercolor. These photos were taken a number of years later when I went back to Jerusalem on the occasion of my granddaughter Sophie Pearlstein, her Bat Mitzvah, and we traveled around Jerusalem extensively at that point.
Bottom is Herodian walls from the time of King Herod, the time of the temple, the big stones. And on top of them you got both cedar walls. And in the middle of the city we see a great dome, which is the Holy Sepulchre where we have been. And we see...
It was the occasion of Sophie's Bat Mitzvah that we were celebrating, on which occasion I did no work. We took a grand tour of the old city. This is the Dome of the Rock, which is now closed to most tourists. This is part of a walk through Old Jerusalem, down to the what is referred to as the Wailing Wall, which was the foundation of the temple that was destroyed by the Romans in the ancient times. There's a group of tourists waiting to see if they'll be allowed into the town, into the mosque. The Dome of the Rock covers the rock that Abraham was to slaughter as an offering to God to prove his faithfulness to God on this rock, which is there, and the dome is built over it. And Dorothy and I, on our first trip to Jerusalem, were able to climb down and actually see the rock up close, which also has the hoof print of the horse that took Mohammed on his ride across the sky, which is basic to the Muslim religion. These are around the ruins of the ancient temple, which included many other religious buildings. That's part of the staircase to the ancient temple. Here we are walking around that area. The staircase led down from the temple, which is now, that site is now occupied by the huge mosque, which is sacred to the Muslims. This is the entrance to the city, called the Gate of the Lions. There are the two lions. The original street is about 15 feet below today's street. Filled in by rubble, garbage, and so forth, of centuries of living. But there's a tunnel underneath the new city, and you can see parts of the ancient city in these tunnels. Not too many tourist groups go down there, but it's quite fascinating. This is views from the walk around the medieval wall that contained the old city. This print was the first thing done as a test for the big print I simply chose the central part of the big watercolor to concentrate on, and this was issued as a separate print called the Temple Mount. This small print sold quite well in a small edition, I think of about 15. The large print, of course, 10 feet wide, was much more difficult to sell. And we had a great deal of trouble with registration because in Florida, the humidity in the print workshop changed so often, and the paper had to be dampened to absorb the ink. So of the initial run of 60, we ended up with about 20 where the registration didn't present too great a problem. The rest were destroyed, except for a few maybe that were kept for documentation. Then again, I was invited to be part of a group in 1997 that was to celebrate the founding of Tel Aviv, which started as a suburb, the unfinished watercolor taken by me, the final painting. While I was working on the painting, I did other watercolor views. The oil painting was done on site. I didn't do a watercolor, but I did 3 or 4 other watercolors at different sites. This is the view from Tel Aviv beach to Jaffa. This was another view of the mosque against the modern building. And this is a view of the same modern building going up, but I did the view from the old town. The original town, the watercolor as it was completed. This is another. What's interesting in Tel Aviv is a series of apartment buildings that were designed, and the construction was supervised by architects from the Bauhaus when they left Berlin during the Nazi era. They went to Tel Aviv.